Well, hello. Welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is the writer, and I guess we could call her, I don't know, seafaring Deborah Hammett, and we're going to be talking about her book, Young Salt at 60. Now, this is a new thing for me, just screen sharing, so in theory, you should be able to see the cover in all of its Caribbean-hued glory of her ship, the Mavia. And Deborah Hammett, welcome to the Creative Writing Life podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, as those familiar with the show are well aware, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched lately. How did we feel about it? Do we like it? Do we not like it? Are we indifferent? Do we never want to see that thing again? I'll go first just to give Deborah a little time to collect her thoughts. The only thing I can recall seeing, it's been a busy week, is that I went to see Thunderbolts at my local screener, my local movie house. I liked it. I was under the impression it was going to be a little more fun, but I still enjoyed it, and I think they did a good job, and it's a nice another entry into the Marvel universe. So we'll see how it goes, and of course, it leads into whatever's coming next, which I think is the Fantastic Four, and that's in July, which I'm very excited about. And also, I've been enjoying a couple of shows on streaming, The Last of Us, which I like, and Hacks. Both of those on Max. Those are really enjoyable, and also really enjoying Andor on Disney Plus because I think they're doing a fantastic job with that. But that's it for me. So I'm going to let Deborah. What has been new or fun and enjoyable in the reading or viewing world of you?
I've been reading The Hungry Ocean by Linda Greenwald, and it is the story of a female captain, a commercial fisherwoman from Gloucester, Massachusetts, and I'm from Massachusetts, so identify. And she has an all-male crew, and she is, doing the business, in a man's world, essentially.
Hmm.
And I love reading about how she has respect for the men, her crew members, and everything. And they have a lot of respect for her. And they, there really is very little gender issues, that pop up. I'm starting to find now where I'm establishing credibility as a female captain with male captains who I have buddy boated with, who I have run into in various locations up and down the East Coast. And, we're really compadres and equals and it's at the point now where they take me very seriously and it wasn't always that way. So it's nice to be growing into this, being taken seriously as a female captain.
Hmm.
Um, and Linda Greenwald is a highly capable female captain, and her experience sort of mirrors that. It's
Okay,
great.
so the Hungry Ocean sounds great, and I mean I do have a couple of questions about being a female captain, but we'll get into that in just a little bit. This is the bio that is on the back of Deborah's book, Young Salt at 60. Deborah Hammett grew up in Katona, New York, and received her bachelor's degree in elementary education at Western Connecticut State University. She moved to Oak Bluffs, Massachusetts, as she just said, on the island of Martha's Vineyard, 1986, when she began her career as a teacher. She commuted off island for graduate school and received her MED in school leadership from Salem State University. Within her 33 years as an educator, she taught at several grade levels and became a school principal. She has two grown daughters, Rilla and Emily. I hope I said Rilla correctly.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
and she now lives everywhere aboard her boat, Mavia. Okay, so what I thought was really interesting about that bio, except for the thing at the end about the boat, there's nothing else about your experiences. But so I think that's kind of like that's where I want to start is that I always ask, I guess, like, how did you get your start as a writer? Like, were you a voracious reader as a child? Did it something that came to you later? But I imagine as a teacher, that you were just reading constantly, not just books on the side and for your own enjoyment, but you were also reading all of the work from your students.
Well, my dad was a high school English teacher. So I was raised in a house where no grammatically incorrect sentences were allowed to be spoken. And all of my papers needed to be combed through by dad before I
Wow.
was handing them in. He was very into that. So you would, it's actually surprising that I have any interest in writing whatsoever. But but really I have always found writing to be pretty easy in terms of, through high school, through college. And then as a teacher, I have enjoyed teaching all different kinds of writing, narratives, nonfiction, persuasive pieces. And I've after I retired, I started doing that with students of all ages, helping college seniors with their essays and things like that too. And I thought, hey, I am a good enough writer and have enough of an awareness of how writing needs to be organized and, how to describe things that I think I could probably write a book. I've read some pretty bad best-selling books and I have something to teach here. I really want to inspire adults my age to take on something new because you absolutely can do it and you can do it in a way that's really big too.
Mhm.
Um, if you are willing to go all in and a lot of people suddenly have the time when they retire to be able to go all in with something new, but they don't always have the courage.
Hmm.
So that's where I thought I could use my writing to inspire.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop the sharing of the image of the book, so it'll just be us now. So I think let's talk about Young Salt at 60. So how would you what would your pitch be for like your 5 second elevator pitch? Like you're trapped in an elevator with a big publisher, and they say, "Hey, I've got a book idea, or I have a book that I would think you would love," and you say,
Well, if you have any interest in sailing or in doing something completely out of your wheelhouse,
"Hmm,
then you might want to check out my book because I have made so many mistakes in learning this brand new thing, going from zero skill to actually being capable of single-handing a boat to the Bahamas and back. I am like the Lucille Ball of the seas. And,
I love
every
that."
mistake that you could possibly imagine, I've pretty much made. And, there have been a lot of tears, a lot of swearing, but I have persevered. And if I can do it and not quit, then you can do it too. And it doesn't have to be sailing, but it can be, whatever your heart desires.
Yeah, I also noticed that I guess like you call it the tagline on the cover is becoming better than retired. That I think you alluded to this a little bit earlier that just because you're retired doesn't mean you have to sit around just doing nothing. You can do your leisurely thing, but it's also great to find something new that you're passionate about.
Yeah, you don't have to be a has-been,
Hmm.
so retirement and being retired, it connotates that you're a has-been. And I mean, honestly, people can live 30 years past retirement, and in 30 years, you can become just about anything you want if you embrace your future the way you did as a 30-year-old or as
Hmm.
even as a 20-year-old, where you look at life as though you had your whole life in front of you, then you can, make amazing things happen in the time that you have left in a new and different way.
Yep, that makes total sense. One of the things I thought was really interesting that it's not a just a straightforward memoir about your experience about learning how to become a captain. That it's almost well, I don't want to call it a how-to because you don't really explain things. But you do, boy, you do watch a lot of YouTube videos over and over again to learn how people do things.
Mhm.
But you have, I thought it was very interesting as I was reading it that you have a few words bold font on the page, and I thought is that's just a really interesting touch. Is that just to emphasize here's a word that's important with sailing, and it was only when I got to the end that I realized, oh my gosh, she put together a whole glossary of all of these words. It's like what a dozen or 15 pages of just
Mhm.
all of these words that are scattered throughout the book. Now, is that just to kind of like emphasize? This is how complicated this thing that I took on was.
Well, it is complicated.
Hmm.
And if if the reader does not have a lot of prior experience with sailing, then they will appreciate a glossary of those terms
Hmm.
and, can refer to it even as a, self quiz to see if they, can remember the meaning of all of those words because that's what I had to do when I learned. I had to study.
Hmm.
And the third grade teacher in me, appreciates the fact that kids can learn a lot by having a glossary to refer to either while they're reading or at the end. So I thought that would be kind of fun for the reader. And then when I looked at how many terms there were, I was really amazed at how many terms I have learned
Hmm.
in the past 3 years. It's really been it's been overwhelming, and no wonder I have had some, crazy confusion and mistakes and things along the way because I didn't know any of those words.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot. I mean, especially
Mhm.
like you're going into a lot of detail and a lot of specifics about parts of the boat. I mean, it's pretty much from stem to stern and everything and anything from the top to the bottom. That did you want to include that just to kind of like really embrace that experience that you went through? They rather than just straightforward, here's what happened, I learned how to sail a boat and you decided I want to actually really bring the reader into this world.
I could never have done it without a very technical understanding
Hmm.
um, of the boat itself and of navigational concepts and of, sail trim and things related to the engine and maintenance and repairs. Because what I have discovered over the past 2 years as a sailor is that sailors need to be able to fix anything that breaks on the boat on the fly
Hmm.
with no ability to go to the store and get the right part. So you've either got to have the right part on board or you've got to create a part using duct tape and spit, you know. So it's really essential and your life depends on it. So that's why knowing the terms for things is so important. Even knowing the term for something so that you can find the right part for it, or so that you can pull up a video about how to install it, how to repair it. You have to know what it's called.
Yeah, yeah,
So, so vocabulary is very, very important. And vocabulary is also really important when it comes to communicating with another person who might be on your boat. Everybody needs to be able to speak the same language. And in sailing class, I was taught that language. So being able to use words like forward and aft, of you're going forward of the location or aft of the location on the
hmm
boat. So the location might be the mast, forward of the mast or aft of the mast. So it's very technical. It's different than bow and stern, you know.
Right,
So
right,
bow is the front, the stern is the back.
right.
Easy.
Yeah, well, that's going to say that's one of the things I thought was probably the most fascinating about it is that unless you're really into that world, like being familiar with sailing or life on the water, that you never really think about all of these little details that are involved. I mean, you describe fixing some of the things that were broken on your boat, and it's just you there. And fortunately, you had the right parts there, or you had something that was close, and it was kind of a stopgap measure until you were able to get back to port and then get the right part. And that just these are things like you don't really think about because you're not in the middle of all of that, especially
Mhm.
when you're out in a boat in the Atlantic all by yourself and there's a storm coming.
And a lot of people wouldn't want to start sailing at the age of 60
Hmm.
because they don't know these things. But what I'm trying to say to the reader is you can learn these things. So any field has vocabulary related to that field. And when you learn the technical words that people in that field are using, then you're able to be fluent in that field. You can ask questions, you can validate information, you can find resources if you know the vocabulary. So, as a reading teacher, vocabulary is like 20% of what it takes to be a reader is having some enough prior vocabulary to be able to read and comprehend new vocabulary embedded within it. But if you don't understand 80% of the vocabulary when you're trying to read something new, you are not going to read it. You're going to say, forget it. So, so to make something accessible to a reader, and this is what I know as a teacher, there should be about 80% of the words that the reader already knows. And you don't ever want to have more than 20% of the words that the reader doesn't yet know. And most of the books that I've read about sailing, sailing biographies and things like that, adventure stories, embed a lot of technical sailing terms without any explanation. And the reader who has sailed can identify and pick up that storyline very easily. But the reader who has never sailed is going to have a much harder time trying to figure out, the meaning of the words and what's actually happening in that situation at sea.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I wanted to ask you is that you get into very specific details about the timeline and also how everything developed. Now, as you mentioned, is this where your background as an educator comes into play? Because you were required to like have a lot of things planned out and kept a lot of records. And so I think you mentioned in the book that you were like almost I don't want to call it journaling, but you were keeping records on a daily basis. And did that help with putting together? I guess we could call it the narrative of the story.
Mhm. Well, a lot of people travel up and down the East Coast of the United States. And a lot of boaters are familiar with a lot of the ports that I was talking about in the story. So I wanted to have the vibe of the book be one where the reader would feel as though they're along for the ride with me. So I wanted it to be in true, authentic chronological order without making it, sort of a bed to bed story. And
Mhm.
when I was a teacher, on Martha's Vineyard, school vacation would happen. And then as soon as they got back from vacation, teaching third grade, kids would come back and they would say, they would do their writing and they would say, I went to Disney. It was really fun. First, we got in the car. Then we went on the boat. Then we went to the hotel. The next day, we went to the airport. Then we flew to
Oh,
Orlando.
oh my goodness.
Then we went to the hotel, so bed to bed story is what I told them that was. And I didn't want to make it a bed to bed story, but at the same time, it was important for the reader to understand how you would make the stops along the way. And that if you're going to start sailing like this, living aboard a sailboat and traveling thousands of miles, you can do it, but because you don't have to do the thousands of miles all in one go.
Mm.
It's like people who have 5 kids, they don't have them all at once. They add and as their experience grows, they know what they don't have to worry about anymore. And by the time the fifth one comes along, they've only got a fifth of the worries.
I can
So,
relate to that because I'm the youngest of five.
oh, okay. So they never worried about you. You just kind
Yeah,
of survived.
yeah, pretty much, pretty much.
Yeah.
One of the things I've really enjoyed about the overall book was just your description of how everything was changing for you, not just about learning how to sail, but also your change and development as a person, and that you're really like finding your footing, you can say,
Mhm.
and like really that asserting your own independence again. Like, you
Mhm.
moved from the land and transitioning to living on the sea. I
Mhm.
would love for you to be able to kind of address that. I mean, is that one of the points of why you wanted to tell this story, that not just like if I can do it, you can do something similar, but also
Mhm.
just like this is the kind of sensation that I experienced. I want you to be able to relate to that.
Well, I, as an educator, elementary school teacher, and then as an assistant principal and a principal, I had 1,000 children in the building where I was the principal. And I was overwhelmed with conversation with people and politics and problems and, all sorts of things. Because I had secretaries and bus drivers and custodians and parents and everything, and music concerts and parent
Mm,
conferences and, all that stuff. And building problems and stuff. So I really just needed a break from chaos.
mm,
And I really wanted to be alone in nature. I just felt like I just needed to just have a big shift in that direction. So, so I spent a lot of my time alone on my way down, and I had very few interactions with people. When I did interact with people, it was online, um, with sobriety meetings. I have 32 years of sobriety, and I that's important to me that I stay connected to the sober community. And luckily, there were, by that time, it was after COVID, so there were plenty of online meetings I could go to, and dock hands. And occasionally, I would stay at a marina and I would meet up with other boaters. Um, I communicated with people in the service departments when I needed things to be fixed on my boat because I didn't know how to fix anything,
mm,
and I I had to learn. And part of that learning was learning that I needed to know. I couldn't hand it to a professional marine mechanic and expect that he would fix it and I wouldn't have to deal with it.
mm.
Doesn't work that way
Right.
because they fix it, or they think they fixed it, and then it breaks again, or maybe that wasn't it. Maybe that wasn't the problem. So, and they're expensive, and you can't always get the parts that you need, and you can't always stay where you would need to be as long as it would take to have somebody else fix it. Bottom line, you have to figure it all out on your own. So I did communicate a lot with mechanics. But you know, it wasn't like the conversation where people were lined up to talk to me. As
Mm.
a principal, there was always like a line. There was
Uh-huh.
always somebody waiting to talk to the principal. And I couldn't keep ahead of it all. It was hard.
Right.
So, um, anyway.
Oh, okay. Actually, I did want to address that. I mean, so going with everything on the boat is working perfectly. It's functioning as it should, and you're just, you're cruising along. That I'd imagine it's like sometimes the feeling isolated can be kind of overwhelming, and especially when you're out on the water and maybe you can't even see the shore from there. So, like, how do you deal with it? And is there a way that for you to translate that to the written word? Was it challenging for you to write out those kinds of feelings, or was it actually, I'm quite in touch with how I can put this on the page?
Um, that that was only a positive thing for
Hmm.
me. I never had I never had the feeling that I was wishing that there was somebody on the boat with me.
Hmm.
Um, I really enjoyed the solitude. I enjoyed watching the water. I watched the animals. The dolphins would swim right next to the boat.
Yeah.
It was magical. And the water just puts on a show every day, and it never looks the same 2 days
Hmm.
in a row. And it's all about the light, and and the wind and, the swells and the wakes from the other boats. And
Hmm.
it's the most fascinating thing for me. I listen to music sometimes when I'm, cruising along by myself. I dance sometimes because getting
Okay.
exercise on a boat is tricky. Getting your cardio
Sure.
is tricky. Yeah. But I had a stationary bike that I would use in the cockpit. My folding bike, which
Mhm.
fit in the dinghy to go to shore, to go to a place, that could also go on a stand in my cockpit. So I removed my cockpit table so I could put the exercise bike there. And sometimes I would do it while I was underway. Um,
Wow.
but mostly I would do it while I was at anchor. I got some
Yeah.
funny looks when I was doing it
Oh,
underway.
I can imagine. I'm sure people thought, "What do you have the pedals connected to the engine?" I'm just saving on fuel. Actually, because there were more than a few times that you mentioned in the book that you would be sailing along and you wouldn't see anybody, and sometimes you would not dock, but you would, I guess, part of it, I'm not as familiar with the terms. Like you would weigh anchor. Was it the EAS or the
AIS, uh-huh.
AIS, yeah,
Uh-huh.
that sometimes you were the only boat there, and you'd be
Yeah,
able to just, I guess, park your boat as it were, and
yeah.
just fix whatever you had to fix, or you would, just kind of relax. Or a few more than a few times you mentioned going ashore, you have some errands to run, or you just go for a run, just
Hmm.
getting that exercise in, and it just sounds like there there were a lot less people around, maybe than expected, or I guess as the reader, I would imagine like you'd just be, seeing boats constantly, but I guess that's not really the case.
Well, on the Intercoastal Waterway, which is, the pathway for boats that goes inland, just inland on the
Hmm.
East Coast, surrounded by barrier islands, protected by barrier islands, there is a lot of traffic.
Hmm.
And I have stopped doing the ICW on weekends. I
Ah.
will I will anchor the boat and stay put on the weekend if I can't go outside. You have the option of going outside on the Atlantic Ocean, but if the seas are too rough, you can go inside.
Hmm.
So going inside is something you can do in almost any kind of weather, but on the weekend it's cuckoo. So a lot of motorboaters don't know the rules of the road. Like if you want to rent a boat, you don't need a whole heck of a lot of training
Hmm.
to be able to charter a motorboat. And there's, a lot of people on jet skis and a lot of really fast fishing boats headed out in a big hurry. And it's kind of intimidating when you have these fast boats coming straight at you and you don't know which way they're going to be turning,
Right.
whether they see you, and um, and when they're going to be turning, or even where they're going to go.
Right, right.
So
You touched on this briefly in the book and also at the beginning of the show. So, what were the general reactions to a woman, sailing by herself? I mean, you say most of it was positive, and there was a few, pushbacks and a few, laughing at you type of thing. But I mean, what was, I guess, the general reception? And also, I mean, especially for the people who were really positive about it, did you have like, other women come up and say, oh, I would love to do this too, that sort of thing?
very little interaction with other women.
Hmm.
Um, the women that I tended to see were with their husbands on, on a trawler or on their sailboat.
Hmm.
And I would talk to couples, um, but not a heck of a lot of interaction with women about that. And most of the single-handed sailors that I met were men, and some of them would come right out and say, "Wow, this is really amazing that you're doing this, especially for a woman." And up north, people wouldn't say anything, especially for a woman,
Hmm.
because they would probably get some sort of pushback on that. But But down south, I noticed that there is definitely a more conservative view of most things as you head farther south. And so some people would say, yeah, it's amazing you're doing this for a woman. But other people wouldn't mention it, and it was a non-issue. And, they treated me with the respect that they would treat any other boat captain. And that felt really good. It felt like I had earned that respect by doing things correctly.
Hmm.
And they were, impressed, and, I had credibility. So I really wanted that kind of credibility because that meant that I was at a different level now. It was that I was actually kind of capable. So so that
Well,
was good.
you certainly describe like how much you put yourself through to learn how to do everything. I mean, you talk about the classes you took and again the constant watching and rewatching of YouTube videos and asking a lot of questions of your instructors and them being really patient and you being as absorbent of information as you could. I mean, it just sounds like you really threw yourself into it and in the end it really paid off.
hmm Well, I knew that I wanted to sail a boat thousands of miles to the Caribbean, or, at least I thought I wanted to go to the Caribbean. Now I'm perfectly happy with the Bahamas now, but that's far, it's pretty far. And I knew that I had to go from zero prior knowledge.
Hmm.
So I knew that I had to really dive in as deeply as I could. And and learning was fun, and I had to learn it in a lot of different ways.
Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. This is something I was thinking while I was reading pretty much the whole book. What was one of the most surprising discoveries about adjusting to life on a boat?
Hmm.
Well, I will. While you're thinking about that, one of the things I loved is that I think you had to, I guess, declutter what you had in your house. And I think you mentioned you had like 13 cutting boards, and you're like, why
Yeah,
do I have 13 cutting boards?
exactly, exactly. And, I had only lived in that house for 19 years. Some people live in their houses for 45 years,
Hmm.
and I, you don't need that much stuff. I have definitely discovered that less is more. You don't own stuff, stuff owns you. Because because you have to organize your stuff. You have to throw out old stuff. You have to clean it. You have to sell it when you don't want it anymore. You have to, figure out where to put it. Well, oh,
Hmm.
you have to match it with your other stuff, you know? So I really think that simplicity is freedom.
Hmm.
And I, remember the hours that I would spend trying to choose drapes or throw pillows
Hmm.
that matched the decor of my living room or dining room on the vineyard. And, what a waste of my life that was, when I could have, done it more simply and not let stuff control me.
Hmm. Oh,
So,
I love that. What would you say? I mean, apart from the simplicity aspect, what's the biggest adjustment to, just life living on the ocean? Like, you live on a boat now.
um, I think when I'm on the vineyard, not having a car is kind of strange.
Hmm.
It's a little weird because, when I'm at a place I lived for my whole adult life, and, I see my friends and they're driving in their cars and they're going to their houses, and I'm like on a folding bike going to the laundromat with a backpack. I kind of feel like a homeless person
Hmm.
so there's some of that little like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because um I gave up. living, owning property in the high rent district, kind of.
Ah, okay.
The vineyard is not cheap. And but what I got in return is a tremendous amount of freedom. So I can really go and live anywhere. And that is extremely liberating.
Hmm.
So in the late fall when I can set sail and head on down the East Coast to the Bahamas, it is a wonderful thing. Right now in May, in New England, it is cold, it is rainy, and I'm headed north, but I'm taking my sweet time. I'm in North Carolina right now.
Oh,
And yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I just I put the cover of the book up again. It is Young Salt at 60 and Becoming Better Than Retired. Has the book already been released or is it about to be released?
The book was released in February.
February. So that is one of the things I was very curious about. How have the reactions been, I guess, especially from sailors and non-sailors?
Well, I've gotten nothing but positive reviews from sailors,
Mhm.
and then, of course, the non-sailor population, um, the demographic I would like to target are people who are near retirement and they aren't really sure what they want to do, but they have sort of a little dream in their background
Sure.
and to try to get them to, have the courage to pursue that dream, whatever it is. And so I think that the response has been overwhelmingly positive. Um, yeah, I'm trying to get the book out there. I'm having to learn a little bit about marketing. Writing the book was actually really easy.
Yeah,
It pretty much wrote itself. Um, I could do it on my own schedule. I didn't have to drop the anchor at a specific time or place in order to write. And that's why I decided to do it to begin with, because I would have a lot of flexibility as a writer in terms of when I wanted to work. And it didn't even feel like work.
Hmm.
Honestly, if I got a rainy day, I would start writing in the morning, and the next thing you know, it would be 5:30 at night, and I'd be like hungry. It was really, it was really like that. And then a few days would go by where I'd be sailing and I'd just be all about, um, getting places because it would be go day after go day after go day in terms of weather.
Sure.
I wouldn't be able to write.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah.
Okay, so the book is available now. So that leads to the inevitable follow-up question. So what's next? I mean, are you going to write about more of your journeys up and down the coast, or like about something that happened in the Caribbean? And do you have something in mind that doesn't even involve sailing?
Um, I think I'm going to write more about sailing,
Okay.
but I think I'm going to write more about boat hacks
Hmm.
and things that people have come up with, ideas that people have created to do certain tasks on the boat. For example, I could write a whole chapter on how to hang the dinghy, different ways people hang their dinghies, because every sailor struggles with dinghy hanging. And,
That's a sentence I
and
did not expect to hear today.
you can have hours of conversation about dinghy hanging with any sailor because there is no one way to do it.
There
There
is
is,
no one way to hang one's dinghy.
that's right. But that dinghy cannot be swinging when you are underway. Because if it is, you've got to turn around and deal with it. And you could potentially fall off the boat. The dinghy could fall off the boat. The dinghy can get damaged holes in it from chafe.
Hmm.
There's a lot to it. So maybe focusing in more on what are some creative things that sailors have done to solve common sailor problems like dinghy hanging or how do you tie your dock lines so that they don't fall into the water
Hmm.
and at the same time that they're accessible when you need them. because there's 100 opinions on all of this stuff.
Well,
So,
as I mentioned earlier, it is just an entirely different world than what a lot of people are familiar with. So just all of these things that you're talking about, it for someone not as familiar with it, it boggles the mind. It really seems like such a foreign concept, but
mhm,
as you are proof that if you really put in the time and the effort to learn about these things and just constantly re-experience them for yourself, that you'll become more familiar with it and more confident about being able to do them.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's because I'm a teacher at heart,
Hmm.
that I feel like that's what I want to do. I want to teach through my writing.
Oh, that's great. So where can people get a copy? And I'm gonna try to bring the copy book up again. Where can people get their own personal copy of Young Salt at 60?
It is on Amazon. It's available as a paperback and Kindle version and also audiobook. And it's available at Barnes and Noble. And it's also available through Ingram Spark.
Ingram Spark. Okay. And what if people want to get in touch with you personally to find out more, not just about the book, but like they have sailing questions about, someone else has an idea about how to hang a dinghy, or if they want to ask you questions overall, like, oh, how did you find your boat? Where can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can message me on Facebook or Instagram at Young Salt 60. Okay, that's my name on Facebook and Instagram. Young Salt 60 with a 60, the digits.
Young Salt 60, 60, the
Uh-huh.
digits. All right. Well, once again, the book is Young Salt at 60, and we've been talking with Deborah Hammett, and this has been all about her boat. Deborah, thank you so much for being here. This is such a it's a great book, and it was an entertaining and very informative conversation.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it. And I'm a new author, but I'm now, really interested in doing some more writing and helping other people tell their story.
Oh, that's great. And also the fact that you were a former teacher, I think that just goes into that wanting to help the other people improve themselves in that regard.
Hmm.
That's great. Well, again, Deborah, thank you so much for being here. Viewers and listeners, if you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. The more people who let the world know about this show, that's all the better. You can check out my social media, my screenwriting blog at maximumz.blog, still on Twitter at maximum_Z, and this show is also there at podcast CWL. I'm on Blue Sky and Instagram at Pez Screenwriting, PEZ. Those are my initials. And this show is also on Blue Sky at Podcast CWL. And you can check out my Go Ahead and Ask books on Amazon. And still doing the crowdfunding for my short film. It's Indiegogo. The film is Shecky, Shecky, about a ghost telling terrible, terrible jokes. Wonderful, wonderful topic. Please donate because I can use all the help I can get on that front. Like I said, that's Deborah. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.